Right over here, you can put your corresponding Post-it in the, oh, I guess it doesn't matter if it's pink or not pink. I'm sorry. Okay, well, sorry, we'll just keep it. Yeah, okay. Pink is Y Church, non-pink is Y City Church, and you can put the Post-it on the corresponding larger Post-it there. It's like a Post-it of Post-its, right? So we'll give you some time to reflect on that on your own with each other. Church in general, like why church? Why should people go to church these days? Enjoy the conversation and the food. I should pray. Let's pray for the food. God knows my heart. Let's give thanks for our food. God, we thank you for this time on this beautiful day to come together to share a meal, have some conversation with one another, and also reflect on where it is you might be leading us as a community. And so we thank you for this food that we are about to eat or are already eating. We ask that you would bless the hands that prepared it from field to table. Bless it to our bodies for nourishment so that we might go out and be part of your blessing in the world. We pray all of this with gratitude and in Jesus' name, amen.
Check. Get it, Carl? Check. 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 Good.
Okay, okay. All right. So, last call for putting your Post-its up. And you're welcome to linger and kind of look over maybe some of the responses that folks put up there during the meeting or after the meeting. This was an exercise that our elder board engaged in a couple of weeks ago, and then our staff as well, to kind of just pull back the lens a little bit, right? We've all kind of been sort of just trying to get the world up and going, and now that the initial sort of instabilities of that, and even my transition coming on, feels a little bit like it's finding its steadiness, to really kind of ask these questions that are kind of philosophical questions, but also bigger visioning, like what are we doing here, right? Why is church important today? After all of what we've been through, and then why specifically City Church? And so, out of that conversation came and our elder Elliot is going to share a little bit about what came up that kind of overlapped with staff and elders. in those questions. But one of the things that came out of that conversation was this articulation of who we are and how are we going to talk about who we are. And we'll talk about more later about why that's really important. But what came out of it was what you've been hearing over the last couple of weeks, that this kind of statement about City Church, you could call it a mission statement or a vision statement, but it's really just like, to help us sort of anchor ourselves a little bit, that if you had one line to sort of talk about who we are at City Church, you could say, at City Church, at City Church San Francisco, let's read it all together. At City Church San Francisco, we aspire to be an inclusive community that follows Jesus with our head, our heart, and our hands. So that is the statement, and then we can talk about how do we follow Jesus with our head? How do we follow Jesus with our hearts? How do we follow Jesus with our hands? And that can look a lot of different ways, right? But that's kind of our anchoring statement that came out of the conversation. But just to give you an idea of maybe some of what came up among the elder and staff conversation, I'm going to invite Elliot to come and share a little bit about that.
Can I rotate this so I can...
Oh yeah, go for it.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Oh, okay, great. My name's Elliot, he, him pronouns. If you haven't met me, glad that you're here. Excited about all of the awesome things you put up there. I'm eager to read those later. Yeah, so like Emily said, at our sort of staff meetings and then a visioning retreat that the board went on, we were asking ourselves these questions, and you'll sort of see here a smattering of different answers that came up. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about these lists is that all the different members on the staff and all the different members on the board had different and sometimes intention, sometimes congruent ideas of what church was about, what City Church was about. And our hope is that this list that we're putting together is also representative of the congregation and allows the diversity that exists within our own community to sort of be there, to not try to necessarily weed things out, but to allow church to be complicated and church to be beautiful. And so I think one of the main things, I won't read this whole list, but that you can sort of think of as defining all of the other things that we do is we come to church to meet Christ, and we come to church to sort of example Christ to each other. And what that looks like is, it shows up in a lot of different ways and manifestations. But we all just had this sense that we are here to be a community that is centered around Christ, and that is a value that we want to sort of carry forward in all of the things that we're doing as a church. Can you go to the next? Oh, no, you already did, sorry. And then why City Church in particular, right? So what is it about our community situated in San Francisco with our history and where we want to be going forwards? There's a sense that our church is an interesting mix of progressive Christianity that is still very much committed to traditional expressions of faith. And so we as a community want to continue to lean into that identity, bringing, again, as Emily said, our heads with intellectual rigor, thinking about our faith both historically and how it meets the complicated world and city that we live in San Francisco. Our hearts, allowing ourselves to be open to each other and also to the city and world around us, knowing that that's a two-way street, right? We break down those barriers in ourselves and recognize the ways that we are diffuse, the ways that we impact one another, and encourage and allow that to happen in a space of trust. And then ultimately with our hands and our feet and the rest of our bodies, it's very, if you've been around City Church for a while, embodiment is a huge part of what we try to do both in our liturgy and our service and how we think about the ways that we give tithes, offerings, and just are a presence in the city, giving to it and also taking from it. And so, yeah, that again, there's the list that you can read. Will these be available?
Yeah, we'll make them.
Yeah, so we'll make those available so that you can sort of read them and sit with them. And then, again, also incorporating all of the things that you brought too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you. If we have any elders here, if you could just raise your hand. So if you want to hear more about how that conversation went, feel free to tap any of them to hear more. So yeah, we're going to, using that framework of head, heart, and hands, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the life of our community, both in terms of just making sure that you're in the loop about some things and then also looking forward and how that's going to shape some of our decision making in the future. So I'm going to invite Stephen Gunlock to come on up and share. So under the head, we're talking about spiritual formation and discipleship, and we've got some things that we've been up to that we want to make sure that you know about.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Stephen Gunlock here. If I don't know you, I do think I know all of you. I use he, him pronouns. Just quick updates, some things you've been hearing about, but updates on maybe how they're going. So we're realizing that we need to have often and frequently staff-led community gatherings here on Sundays, but then we're really leaning heavily on some of you and would like to lean more on all of you for congregant-led studies and events. In terms of spiritual formation and discipleship, which is more the things that have to do with actual content and things like that. Here on Sundays, Emily's been leading the Elements of Faith class, which seems like it's going really, really well. There's about 15 people participating in that, 18 participating in that. And it's a combination of a introduction to faith, an introduction to City Church, and perhaps a reintroduction to City Church for some people as well. So that'll be running for another 4 weeks or 5 weeks from today as well. We have the Take and Read, which initially I had accidentally called Take a Read. And we had printed Take a Read everywhere, and nobody noticed it, but we fixed it. So thank you, Take and Read, folks. So that's John and Sarah Dahl and Elizabeth Marshman and Diana Marin leading that monthly theological discussion group. And then we just finished, Andrew and Mandy were leading the Queer Theology group, which met for about 4 weeks at the City Church office. Had close to 20 people participating in it, I think. I know some of you participated in it. And so those are all going great. They kind of are a new model for us, a more grassroots model of doing, spiritual formation and discipleship. And we would like to continue leaning more heavily into that. So I think that's it for that piece.
Great. Next up, we have Peter to share. We just hosted our Faith and Justice kind of midpoint conference for the cohort, and it was a wonderful experience. So Peter's going to share a little bit about what happened.
So we've got a number of updates here. The first is the conference. We had a fantastic gathering. The theme was around the future of faith, and we had participants we packed out City Hope, so thank you to City Hope for hosting us. And we had folks from all over the country coming together to really unpack and think about what it means, what Christian faith rooted in the past and in tradition, what that looks like for the future. And I want you to kind of try and get the scale of this, because we had as sponsors Pittsburgh Seminary, Princeton Seminary, the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, and then San Francisco Theological Seminary. But I would say the two really critical sponsors and supporters of that work were City Hope and City Church San Francisco. It was so gratifying to see so many of you there. About half of the participants, we had folks from all over the country, but about half were from the SF Bay Area. And so that was really wonderful to see such a solid local representation. And then just reflecting on it, it simply would not have been possible to do an event like that without the support of City Church and especially the staff. And so thank you to Pastor Emily, thank you to Barbara, to Carl and Jason and Joshua, especially for playing such key roles in the preparation and the execution of that event. And for those of you who were not there, you might be feeling like you missed out, but part of the kind of creative work that we're trying to do is to really harness some of the material there, and we will be repurposing some of it for a class that we offer in the City Church community, and so you can be on the lookout for that. It's going to be called, we're thinking, a class on the theme of Beyond Deconstruction, to happen sometime after Easter, and so some opportunities there. And then we sort of paused the Faith and Justice monthly conversations, but those will resume after Easter in April and May, and it would be a great opportunity for us to revisit some of the wonderful conversations that are happening online. So just about a week or two ago, we had Kristen Dumais, the New York Times bestselling author of Jesus and John Wayne, talking about her first book as we focus on gender and justice. We have maybe one more to highlight is justice in a multi-faith society. And so what does interreligious dialogue look like, and how does it inform the work of justice for us as Christians? And so some really important topics that we'll be addressing. And it's also not too early for many of you, maybe all of you, to think about the Faith and Justice Fellowship, which is a 9-month experience that goes from September through May. And so we would love to see many of you participate in that. There's always a strong representation from Bay Area folks and especially City Church folks. And so thank you for your support. Thank you for your participation. And yeah, it's really good to be doing this work rooted in a church like this. Thank you.
The last kind of part of our head discussion is in regards to our elder meetings. Some folks are familiar that we have an elder board and know what that means and how that functions, and some of you aren't. So we want to kind of just create a little bit more transparency and understanding around that. So I'm going to invite our vice president of our elder board, Lucia Angel, to just share a little bit of some details about how we function, or how the elder board functions.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon now. Good to see everyone here. My name is Lucia Angel, and I'm one of the elders here at City Church. The elders at City Church function as part of the governing board of our church. So we work, with Emily, help support with visioning, planning, kind of supported the search for a new pastor, things like that. So it's a really great privilege and honor to serve in that role and have kind of the opportunity to have a role in, the future of our church. That's who we are. We meet about once a month, a lot more often sometimes when there's things happening, but the goal is to meet about once a month. And we're actually hoping to start to share some of our meeting minutes. So that's something that kind of has happened and that we use for our purpose of, planning and building upon, but we want it to be, make it a little bit more transparent. So hopefully soon you'll be seeing that in a form like an e-news or something like that. So look out for that. The other thing, let me see what was part of being an elder is also kind of, it's a 3-year term role. Right now I'm actually coming up on the end of my 3rd year here. So every year we look for elders, 2 to 3 usually, to kind of step into that role. Usually the process is, by nomination of members of the church nominated. You vote to either accept us or not, and then we serve in that 3-year role. So just if that's something that you might be interested in, you can think of other folks that might be good folks to fit in that role. We welcome, bring that conversation to us. We do a formal nomination each year, so that's an opportunity to nominate folks. But if you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to us, staff, Emily. And yeah, really encourage it. I would say just part of my experience, it's not always the easiest role, but it's really an honor and a privilege to serve in that role. And I've learned so much just being in that role. So I appreciate the trust that you place in us. And please feel free to use us as a resource because we want to be there for that.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you know someone who you're like, you would be a great person to add your leadership to the church, the nominations open up in May and toward the end of May. So just kind of keep your eyes and ears out for that. And then if you yourself feel moved to nominate to serve in that role, then talk to a buddy and say, hey, would you nominate me? It might be a clarifying conversation if they're like, oh, well, actually, I don't know if I feel. So, that's we'll just figure it out. But so that's it for kind of the head part of our thinking about how we live and do as community. And I'm going to invite Stephen to come back up as we shift to the heart and to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we are connecting in relationship with one another.
Yeah, so hello again. It's been like 3 minutes. But ways we're connecting right now, again, doing these in new ways, less programmatic ways. We've done these in the past, but again, we're really leaning on all of you with community member-led gatherings, some examples of things that have happened recently, or the East Bay meetup, We have the BIPOC kickback that's happening regularly. We have a North Bay meetup happening soon. The 2-hour cocktail party is happening regularly. And all of these are things that came about either, just from your ideas, or maybe, some combination of like a little bit of our ideas with your ideas. But we need more things like this to happen. We need these to continue to happen. So if you are interested in doing something, please approach us. You can do almost anything. There's not much that we will say no to. Yeah, as long as it's church appropriate. There's very little that will get a no. But we'll let you know. We'll let you know. Emily's like, there's a no. There's a no there. But other things happening, third Sundays, we're going to start doing Fellowship Sunday, where we'll be inviting everyone to bring something to share for us to enjoy after the service together. Lent, there will be prayer walks happening with our partner organizations. These will be kid inclusive. So for example, we'll be doing a prayer walk in the Western Addition on March 11th, March 18th. There will be one in Chinatown. On March 25th, there will be one in the Excelsior. And on April 8th, there will be one in the Tenderloin, I believe, with City Hope people. So those will be roughly from about 9:30 to 11. So keep those in mind for the season of Lent. There'll be great ways to connect with people. If there's people you are connected to or groups you're a part of, they might be good things for you to invite them to. I think that's it. All right.
Thank you. Our Lenten sermon series is going to be about it's about place. And that will coincide with an outreach campaign that we're going to be engaging in that Jason will talk about later. But so as part of that sort of placeness, we are going to be walking our streets and learning about our neighborhoods, and also praying in ways that are not cringeworthy, but are for the sake of the uplift and upbuilding of our city. Jay Wilson would have been up here sharing about the diaconate and the counseling center, but he is on the second round of some illness. And so I'm going to just give a really quick overview about some of the things that he's working on. One is that the diaconate is going to really get a makeover. There's going to be a much more robust invitation for folks to serve and care for our community and our city. Certainly that'll be inclusive of things like what Linda Fiegels is already doing around arranging for meals, but also thinking about someone who will kind of shepherd our service efforts in the city as well, and kind of be that person who's making sure that that's happening and resourcing folks, as well as congregational care, things like writing cards to people, or just letting people know that they're seen and they're being thought of. And so just be on the lookout for more information about that. Also, the other thing that Jay's been working on is giving the Counseling Center website a bit of a reboot, and really thinking strategically about how to make sure that folks can find the Counseling Center online if they are starting to look. If you've ever tried to find a therapist in the city, it is it can be a real challenge. And so we really want to build the accessibility of our counseling center out to lower that bar as much as possible, not just for folks at City Church, but for our neighbors in the city. And so as part of that, there is just kind of a heads up, like a thinking about whether or not it should be renamed in some way that will feel more accessible without compromising the fact that they are a ministry of the church. So that's that. And the last thing, to just give you a heads up and mark your calendars, if if you're in a married or long-term committed relationship, and maybe, sometimes you're on the struggle bus, right? The Gottman Couples Retreat is something that we're going to be offering for married couples or long-term committed couples, February 21st through the 23rd. That's going to be, we're still looking for a location for it, but we're looking for sort of something within an hour-ish drive. And just to be clear, this is inclusive of same-gender couples. Sorry, thank you. April 21st to 23rd. Yeah, thank you. April 21st to 23rd, and it is inclusive of same-gender couples. So there's please just know that. And it's not the content of the Gottman retreat is not religious. And so if there are folks in your orbit who you think might be interested in something like this, it's just a way to be able to strengthen your relationship with each other. You don't have to be on the struggle bus, right? So like, it's probably better if you're not. But it's fine if you are, like, just all the things, right? But it's a great way to be able to just take some dedicated time to like do a little bit of a checkup and like, are we living our relationship the way we want? So that's it for the heart piece. And then on to the hands. I'm going to stay up here. We are a community that has always had a long history around service and service work. And so we had our very first service and fellowship Sunday when we were not able to meet here for worship. And I heard lots of reports from different folks about how fun that was and how much they enjoyed the opportunity to not only to be of service, but also like be in conversation with other city churches while doing service, which is a wonderful way to build relationships with others and also do great things in the city. And so we're thinking that will probably continue. And our next service and fellowship Sunday isn't until July 2nd because this space won't be available again. So we'll continue at least at a minimum for those times when we can't worship here. That's a great opportunity to sort of God's saying, get out of here, go do something in the city. Along with that, we got to know Manny's from Manny's in the mission. And if you know about Manny's, then you'll know that it is a place that is really committed to civic engagement. And so I talked with Manny. He's actually I'm going to be co-preaching with him in a couple of weeks. He's going to be joining us for worship. He's nuts. He's going to like kick off the trash pickup, get in his car and drive here and then like hop up, we'll have a conversation, and he's going to get back into his car and then go back and close out the trash pickup. So, that's pretty cool for us that he's dedicated enough to come out and join us in conversation. But so he's really committed to the common good and really promoting the common good in the city. And so one of the things in our conversation that he was thinking about starting is what he's calling Manny's Civic Core. And so what's going to happen is once a month, there will be kind of a random service opportunity. He's got lots of connections with different organizations in the city, so it might be pulling weeds at the park, or it might be cleaning up some areas of the city or something else altogether. But just kind of once a month, the first Saturday of the month, I have committed City Church to up to 15 to 18 people. He's got a party bus that he's working on getting. If you just kind of want to get out and do something good, we've got 15 spots reserved every month to contribute to that and be part of something much bigger than just the things that we are coordinating and leading. So there's more information that's going to come. We're continuing, as we've heard already, our St. John's Harvest Pantry service work on a quarterly basis, led by Katie Biber. With City Hope, we have had a long time relationship with them, but I did have a conversation with Paul, and he was like, we need more city churchers to step up. And that wasn't like a shade thing, it was an invitation, right? So my goal is to increase representation of City Church at City Hope. And so whether it is maybe you're in a community group or you're in a fellowship group or you just kind of want to help out, my goal is that every city churcher, at least every involved city churcher would volunteer once a quarter at City Hope. Our youth group already does it once a month. So, you should try to beat that, but yeah. So if you're part of a community group or a fellowship group or just a group of people who have too much time on your hands, get together and say hey, we want to help out with any number of the opportunities that are available offered at City Hope. So it could be Saturday morning serving meals and getting to know the guests there. It could be helping to facilitate some of the movie night stuff and providing snacks. It could be packing groceries on Tuesday morning and delivering them to neighbors in the Tenderloin. But I would love to just sort of shore up that longstanding partnership with with our friends and partners at City Hope. And if you have any questions, Paul Trudeau is right there, and he is happy to answer any questions that you might have. Also, I just want to name, because this was brought up at our staff meeting, okay, this is great for everyone, but are the staff going to do it too? And so I just want to assure you, we will practice what we preach, and the staff are also charged with participating regularly in service work at City Hope and or in any of these other service opportunities that I shared about. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, I guess, if that's the right way to put it. We continue to have our one-off events as well, and that will happen with regularity. Probably the other new thing, just to let you all know, you've heard maybe me talk about it a couple of times, is that we, along with our service work, we've kind of had this gap around justice work. If service work is the need that is presented right now, justice work is the circumstance which causes that need. Right? And so we are working to build partnerships with Unity San Francisco. This Unity Coalition is actually was started by just 7 years ago by a group of Black clergy who approached Jewish leaders and said, hey, we are really having a hard time getting things done, like happening in the city. And we feel like you guys might know what that's like. Would you help us? And so then they started this Unity Coalition. It's a Black and Jewish-led organization that really is partnering with Black-led organizations that are trying to get things done around changing policies around incarceration and people who are leaving jail to start their lives, or any other number of issues that are coming up, things around housing and jobs. And so we are exploring and pursuing a partnership with the San Francisco Unity Coalition as a way to be led by folks who are the ones who are who are most impacted by injustice, and to say, how can we add our support? So currently one of the things that they're trying to do is provide some points to lawmakers around policies for folks post-incarceration to avoid recidivism, right? To avoid them returning to prison, that they can actually have some resources available to get them off and going into a healthy direction. And so if you are interested in participating in that, we are really kind of building up, and they're also kind of building up, trying to figure out what's the best way to do all of this. It's a great way for us to get involved on that upstream work of justice work as we continue to do that downstream work of service and care. The last thing I'm gonna, or that I'm not mentioning, but I'm gonna invite Jason up. We had a hard time figuring out, is this in the head or is this in the hand or the heart? And so we just said it's heart and hand. And Jason, our Director of Evangelism and Communications, is gonna share about some outreach events that we've got coming up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't get a mic that often, so I have to take advantage of it. I'm gonna make this look official. I promise this is not that intimidating. Yeah. So this vision statement at City Church San Francisco, we aspire to be an inclusive community that follows Jesus with our head, heart, hands. When I think about that word and I think about evangelism, I'm sure when I say evangelism, your mind goes into dark places. So I'm there with you. Let me just be honest. But it is an opportunity with this vision to reframe these kind of pictures that we've created or experiences we've had, tweets we've read, whatever. So we get to ask questions like, whose and what story are we telling? What is good news? If it is good news, what does that mean? Who is this good news for? What methods do we need to possibly begin to use or re-engage? What might it look like to talk about this community with a ton of pride? Not about what we've done, but who we are becoming. What might it look like to show up and be present in the life of our city in these civic fun events with prophetic joy? And finally, how might we use technology in ways to help spread the message of God's love at work in our midst? So these are some of the questions that I've been thinking about. Before I go further, I have 3 disclaimers. One disclaimer: while it's in the name, evangelicals, neo-evangelicals, new evangelicals, whatever evangelical, no one owns that word. And so we get to create our own meaning of that word. That's really important. We get to understand our context and what does that word look like for City Church San Francisco in 2023. So one idea of what it might be the reason that we're all here. Possibly, when this church began, the internet kind of existed at that point, I guess. So you might be here from good SEO. You might be here from an ad you saw. You might have been invited by a friend. You might have been told by some campus ministry. Who knows? Evangelism in all of its micro and macro ways created paths for us to be here today. And because we are an urban church, we're constantly in the cycle of transience. People are moving in and out of our town. And even every maybe like 4 to 6 years, the city decides it's done and it just wants to be something different. And so guess what? If you read tweets, read the Chronicle, we're doing that right now. And we're going to emerge, we're transforming into something. So we get to ask this question. We get to ask this question about who is San Francisco becoming, but also who are we becoming? But also we have to recognize this ground is being tilled, to get biblical, the Jason paraphrase. The ground's being tilled and we're looking for workers, honestly. So what seeds should we begin planting? And we can plant those seeds of good news through evangelism. So my second disclaimer, yes, we need to wrestle with the word evangelism, how it's been used, misused, abused. We need to consider that 1999 missions trip to Daytona Beach when we had our Discman and we were listening to No Scrubs and passing out tracts. If you don't know what a track is, talk to me afterwards. We're gonna recreate them. But that's like a disclaimer. Yeah, we have to talk about that. Yeah, we need to wrestle with that. But who is San Francisco becoming, and what is our part to play in that unfolding story? So how does these postures shape evangelism? First, we're gonna do a campaign that's called A Place to Be. So Lynn, as Emily said, we're going to look at the places where Jesus was. We're gonna look at the places where we are, and we're gonna tell about who we are through this lens of this kind of campaign called A Place to Be. It'll be popping up digitally in spaces. It'll be popping up on muni ads, on buses. There's some fake ads here. We're still making the ads, so not the finished product for all you designers in the room. But the goal of this ad is to not only show the breadth of our community, we're using these kind of psychographic words to say a place to be curious, a place to be an artist. And kind of the person in the image is going to tell that how that word and how City Church kind of relate to one another in their own story. And you see the ad, and maybe you'll see yourself in their story, and maybe you'll come to an event. Maybe you'll show up on a Sunday. Maybe you'll hear there's free coffee and donuts. Who knows? It'll be awesome. Next, we are exploring what I definitely didn't create. I'm sure someone's already said this, but I'm calling it pop-up evangelism. There we go. So the idea of this is what might it look like for us to be in civic spaces and cultural events throughout our city. So we're exploring what would it look like to show up at the end of Beta Breakers. Now, I've been working on a Sunday in this town for 13 years. I've never been to Beta Breakers, so I don't really know what happens at the end. I kind of know what happens right here, on the Panhandle, but I don't really know what happens at the end. So I'll be looking to you, runners, tell us what happens, and what would it look like for us to show up at the end, not only to be a familiar face for folks running the race, but also just to maybe create a cool backdrop that folks could take a photo of. They can learn more about our church, just a way for us to be out in the spaces where the people in our town are congregating. We're also exploring that for other Marathon Sunday, et cetera. And then another pop-up evangelism event that we've kind of built up to is the one that I'm going to ask you to dig through your costume box or closet for, because we are going to march in the San Francisco Pride Parade this June. So we're going to muster up all the prophetic joy that we have, and we're going to have fun. There's still going to be worship service here at 10 a.m. We're going to do a little worship and march and dance party. Yeah. Pass out hugs. We're looking for things to pass out, We got God Loves Glitter, riffing on something that was said in this space at one time. But yeah, what would it look like for us to show up at the Pride Parade and march and be a point of joy, Christian joy in that space? Maybe we could get DJ Kenny O to be our DJ. Elder, we have an elder DJ, everybody. Maybe you, this is an idea Emily had. I'm from Appalachia, so you think I would know this. I don't know anything about line dancing. I know it's cool. But like, maybe you do. Maybe you're like, I love line dancing and I can call a line dance. That's like a whole art form. Well, we could recruit you. We could do line dancing. Who knows? So that's some of our pop-up events. Finally, my third disclaimer. I said I had 3, right? So evangelism, like most isms and ologies, were never intended to be done alone. So because of that, we need you. I need you. We're going to do this thing together. Maybe you're marketing, advertising. Maybe you know how to create a vibe. You love to throw a party. Maybe people say, wow, I really love how you make me feel welcome or warm. Maybe you're good at writing or copy editing and you caught that last slide that had the funny, no one caught it, did they? Some people caught it, okay. Yeah. You'll have to look back at the tape. But there's spaces and places on this evangelism team for everyone to hear. And I want it to be a fun experience. I want it to be like the joy arm of our church. So when we go out into the streets, we show up with joy. So if you're interested, talk to me. We'll be rolling out more things. And if you don't want to be on the team, that's fine. But like, show up at an event, show up at the parade, show up. I'm giving you a reason to play hooky from church. So come play hooky with me on evangelism. Thank you.
So Christy and Elizabeth have agreed to be on those ads. So you can say like, I knew her way back when, right? Before her face was all over San Francisco. Are you ready, Elizabeth? Your face was like, what did I sign up for? Well, it's too late. So thank you so much for your service. Some of you might be wondering like what we're up to in terms of staffing. We've got a lot of different movements happening. And so I've been working really hard with our personnel team and just really spending a lot of time in prayer and reflection about, okay, what's the way forward and how we're going to think about all of this. And so first of all, I want to introduce you to our hiring team, our personnel team, Ryan Iperspach, who's an elder, Robin Huey, and Ryan Zarati. So if you would like to be on the personnel team, your name has to start with an R, and you get a leg up if your name is Ryan. So, but seriously, they've been really good thought partners in terms of just helping me to like verbalize a lot of things and then help me ask good questions to think about how do we approach this. So their role is really to advise the senior pastor on personnel decisions. And so again, if you're interested in learning more about serving on that team, feel free to talk to me or any of those members, and we'd be happy to kind of talk that through with you. So here is the process that I've devised. Taking Jim Collins' recommendation about getting the right people on the bus and then putting them in the right seats, sort of is how I'm approaching it, which is, so if you go on our website, we have made our jobs page live. And so if you look at it, you'll see, first of all, this kind of landing pages, we are looking for a kind of person. Committed Christian, collaborative, open to correction, a builder, someone who can build things and is excited about building things, and another thing that I can't remember off the top of my head. So those 5 things, if those are true of you, we are looking for these kinds of people to lead in these 5 areas of ministry. And each area of ministry represents about a half-time position. So if you want a full-time job, apply with interest in 2 or more of these positions, and then we'll figure it out, right? That's basically how I've designed it. So the 5 positions are worship leader. Carl is so amazing, we had to split his role into 3 jobs. So a worship leader, co-leader for vocals, a worship co-leader for instrumentals, a pastor for liturgical arts. Then the other 2 are discipleship positions. One is around spiritual formation and learning, or spiritual learning. Thank you. Learning and spiritual growth. I'm like, I knew growth was in there. Learning and spiritual growth. And then the other discipleship position is service, justice, and community building. So that's an organizer. That's a community organizer right there. Only one of those positions requires ordination, the pastor for arts and liturgy, because it feels very obvious, like they would be presiding over the elements and that kind of thing. But the other positions don't require ordination, because what we're really looking for is the right kind of person. And as we know, that a lot of our ordination systems and structures are biased in ways that make it really difficult for people of color and for queer people and non-conforming people to make it through, because what they're trying to do is have a union, right? It's a union. That's what an ordination is, kind of in a lot of ways, functionally. And so, so we want to cast the net as wide as we possibly can to get the right kind of people. And so ordination is only required for one position that really would require that kind of formation. So the position is open, position application is open today, and we're inviting folks to submit to that. So if there are people in your life that you know about that you're like, oh, they would be great for this, send it away, or just send it out and say if you know anyone who would be a fit. We really want to cast the net wide and build the right kind of team to help us move into the next chapter that God is inviting us into. Now, along with that, two things are going to be happening concurrently. One is that we are going to be putting together a survey to garner folks' thoughts, feedback, ideas. What are they looking for in these various roles? So you're going to have an opportunity to provide some feedback, and that feedback will inform the questions and the discernment of the hiring team. So that doesn't have to be figured out before we send out the applications or send out the job descriptions. So that, just kind of keep your eyes open for that. We'll let you know when that's up, and we'll make sure that it's open long enough to make sure that we get robust feedback. Then the other thing is that we are building an interview team and a search team. So if you are interested, there's going to be 2 search teams, because the musical worship leadership search is just in a different category than the other roles. And so we want to make sure that we get the right kind of folks making decisions and asking the right kinds of questions. So there are going to be 2 hiring teams. One is for the musical positions, and then the other is for the non-musical positions. And so if you're interested in possibly serving on the interview team, then I invite you to submit an application, that top QR code, and the elders, along with myself, will determine kind of what the final makeup of those hiring teams will look like. And because we want to make sure that there is diversity of perspective and involvement in the church that's represented on those teams, so that way it's not just kind of one type of person or whatever, so that way we can have good discussion and discernment together. So the personnel team, we haven't talked about this, but if they want to be a part of it, then they get to be on it because they're on the personnel team. But so for the hiring team, if you're interested or curious about it, then feel free to submit an application to serve on the interview team. And so I hope, this is a little ambitious, but I hope to have all the positions at least filled with like a yes, if not also a body, by the end of June. Like if they haven't started, they might not have started by then, but I'd like to sort of be able to say like, okay, these are the people serving in these roles. And so I ask you to pray for this process, that God would sort of just shake out the people who need to know about these openings, and to pray for the hiring team and just every step of that process, that the right folks would get on the bus, and then we'd be able to get them on the right seats. So I'm going to pause right there. Are there any questions about what I'm proposing or sharing about this hiring process at this point? Okay, well, this is not the last time we have to talk about it. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me or come up to me after the meeting, and I'm happy to talk with you more. Now I'm going to invite our finance team to come on up and give us a quick update on where we landed with our stewardship campaign, and where we are in terms of finances at this moment.
Hi, guys. Alex here, Rhonda, Don. We're your finance team. So there's going to be a couple slides, very, very high level. We're going to be here after to answer any questions, and share with you whatever you guys are thinking about. So we had a pledge campaign to raise $2.5 million in pledges. We got over 100 pledges, which was amazing. And we're at $1.575 million pledged, which is, praise the Lord, like just an incredible response from you guys. I mean, really, from all of you guys. And then we've already received $600,000 in non-pledged donations. So, right now we're at about 2.125. Is that right? Yeah. And so we have on the next slide 325K remaining to meet our $2.5 million budget, which is still a large amount of money. And so we're hoping that we're in February, and our fiscal year end is August 31st. So we're hoping to get that remaining 325K pledged and received by that time frame. So please, if you haven't done so, would love for you to participate in this incredible campaign. Just to update you, our reserves are still very strong. We still have kind of 6 months plus of reserves, which is fantastic. And then our spending, we've continued to monitor it, making sure we're not, we're making sure we're in line with our budget on spending, and that's been the case up to now. So from September 1st, when our fiscal year started, to January 31st, we've been right along our budgeted spending. So we'll continue to monitor that as we go, given a little bit of a shortfall. Want to make sure we're doing all the right things and being good stewards of the money you guys entrust us with. Rhonda?
Yeah, so as Alex says, we do have a bit of a gap. But I would say this is an opportunity for us to really explore how are we engaging. We form City Church, and as the finance team, the elder board, working with Emily and the staff, we feel that we're aiming to follow God closely, discern his plans for us, and that's what underlines our budget. But we invite you into that process, and that's very much what's behind the campaign for pledges. There's a certain amount that's come in. But I invite those of you that have not yet pledged to think about that. When we think of our head and our heart and our hands, I ask you to pray for us as the finance team and the elder board, but to pray yourselves to think about, do I see God working here? Is this something that I want to engage in? And will I commit by filling out a pledge and really thinking into what is my giving and how can I be helping do this work that God has called us to do in the city of San Francisco?
Transparency in under a minute. Okay. I'm Don Wong Jr., second of my name. My father, Don Wong Sr., was born in late 1931 in San Bernardino, California during the middle of the Depression. My mother and her family fled Shanghai, China in 1949 for Taiwan. And in our family, we did not have a tradition of transparency when it came to talking about money. It was a very private thing. We didn't talk about it. So it brings me great joy that City Church has adopted a posture of wanting to be open and transparent with its finances. How can we expect anyone to give generously when they don't know where that money is going? So that's sort of the posture we've adopted, and please hold us accountable to that. One of the ways we intend to do that is through quarterly updates from Pastor Emily, where you get progress updates on giving and where the money is going. It really is, I appreciate the hard work that Pastor Emily is leading our entire congregation on through this visioning process, because it connects our giving to what really matters and why we exist in this city at this particular time. More transparency. So you're looking at me and you see a really robust, vital 51-year-old, okay, fine, under 200-pound individual. I weigh a little less now after my surgery, but in high school, believe it or not, I was pretty much the same height, except I was 138 pounds my freshman year. And my BFFs in high school were like, Don, we gotta join the wrestling team. And I'm thinking to myself, I've never participated in organized sports. I'm gonna get killed. And it's true, I did. So they're like, Don, the first thing you need to do is you check in at 138. If you suck weight every week for weigh-in and compete at the 132 level, you will be more competitive. And I can assure you that that is not the case. It leaves you really, really tired, and you don't have the energy, and you're wrestling against guys who just had their Big Mac right before weigh-in. And it was sad. In transparency, I lost every match my freshman year of high school. Before the last match of the year, Doug Cook, another freshman, he saw me in the locker room with my head between my knees. I was just really anxious, and he came up and he knelt next to me, he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, Wong, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And I lost that match, which I already told you. But my hope is that we, this body of believers that believes in the vision of City Church, together we are going to punch above our weight class, that the dollars that we give, our time, our talents, our resources, all add up to more than any of us could have imagined because we're doing it together. Thanks.
On my mic here. So I'll wrap us up briefly. Thank you to our finance team. We've got just some upcoming things that I want to put on your radar. This time next week, after service, so not this time, actually a little bit earlier than this time, we've been talking about having an evacuation plan in the event of any number of things, one of which could be an active shooter, actually prior to the pandemic. And a whole plan was figured out and rolled out, and then it was going to be shared with the congregation at the next time that they could. It was the end of February. Everyone had big ideas about what the world was going to look like, and then we no longer needed that plan, at least immediately, as the pandemic shut everything down. And so we've been working to kind of reinvigorate that plan and figure things out again. And so I want to let you know some of the safety commitments and measures that we have engaged in. One is that we have implemented walkie-talkies on each floor of the building. So there's a walkie-talkie with the children on the first floor, and then with typically it's Stephen who's wearing it up here on the second floor. And so there's always kind of some conversation happening, and people, RJ has one, Stephen has one, and then a children's worker, typically Barbara, has one. So that way if anything's going on, that there can be quick communication to let you know that. Next week after service, pretty much immediately after, we're gonna bless folks out, and then everyone who has to leave can leave, and then anyone who is interested to learn, but especially leaders and staff, will stick around, and we're gonna just do a run through of an evacuation drill, what that would look like. And along with that, so we have two exits. We have the ones that you typically come in, but there are some exits over here up front as well. So we just want you to know that that's there. And hopefully we never have to make use of that information, but it's always important to have that. And so if you're the kind of person who's like, I just, like it helps me feel better to know that someone's thinking about these things, right? We are thinking about them, and we're gonna work on just kind of making sure that we've at least gone through the motions once. Along with that, we are searching for a security guard to come and just kind of hang out and keep an eye on things as well. And we need your help with this, because we've reached out to a few security companies, and they really only offer coverage for folks in 8-hour shifts, which makes sense, but church is not that long yet. And so we are looking for other options. So if you are familiar with if you know any like security guards who would be willing to pick up a couple of hours, right? If people who are trained, or if you know of any organizations or companies that might be promising, then I ask that you would let Stephen Starfuss know back there, and we can follow up on that. A couple more things. One is that Holy Week is happening after 40 plus days. During that, we're going to go back to having 4 services like we traditionally have here. And one thing that we're going to do that's a little bit different is for Maundy Thursday, we are going to try having hosted meals in different people's homes. So if you are interested in hosting folks, I know we've got some dinner party people here. If you would like to host some folks in your home for a Maundy Thursday meal, then please make sure to use that QR code or talk to Stephen Gunlock about that. And what's going to happen during that meal, you could either host and like provide all of the meal things, or if you want, you can coordinate a potluck among your guests. And also, if you could use some subsidization on the cost of any of that, then please reach out and let us know. But we're looking for a host, and that host then will just be responsible for creating that space, and then you'll have a partner who leads a liturgy, a table liturgy to enjoy together as we remember Jesus' mandate to love one another and the last meal that he shared with his friends. So we're really excited about that. And there will also be one at the church office. So that'll be like a big meal together. So if you are interested to learn more about that, please be sure to fill out the form on the QR code. We will be having Good Friday here at the Russian Center in the early evening. So keep your eyes out for that, peeled for that. We'll have Holy Saturday, our Easter Vigil here at the Russian Center as well in the early evening. And we'll also be celebrating some more baptisms that day. And then on Easter Sunday, folks had so much fun at the Golden Gate Bandshell, we're gonna go back. And so we all need you to start praying right now for good weather, just like last year. And we're hoping that following that service to have a picnic for anyone. Some folks have, Easter things that they need to get off to, which is totally great and fine. But we were also thinking it might be kind of nice for the people who want to stick around and hang out to have a picnic. We'll have an Easter egg hunt for the little ones. And so if you are interested, we need folks to coordinate this. Our staff is going to be going bananas that week trying to do all the things that you have to do for Easter and Holy Week. And so we really need some folks to step into kind of a hospitality coordination role around coordinating what that picnic time would look like. And so you can talk to Joshua Halandaon if you are wanting to be part of that. And then you can talk to Barbara if you want to help with the Easter egg hunt. I mean, they're going to be tag teaming it anyway, but that's kind of the division of labor around that. And finally, I want to invite you to save some dates, especially we've got a couple of big things coming up for our youth and our children's ministry. So April 14th to 16th is the spring youth retreat. So that's going to be happening in Santa Cruz. And so you can talk to Joshua about that. And then we have City Camp that's going to be happening June 3rd. Here in this space, it is going to be transformed into a total obstacle course. It's going to be amazing. And then we're going to have church on Sunday. And we're going to do church obstacle course. I'm just kidding. But it's going to be cool. And so if you know folks, both of these are great events for folks who aren't necessarily part of the community, but who are maybe looking for some space for their kids or nephews or nieces to be able to build community in a welcoming environment. So that is all we've got going on in our community. That's all. If you have any questions, please, I'll stick around here. You can always, of course, email me as well. We'll take a look at all of these posts. I'm eager to read them and see what has come up for folks. But why don't we close in a word of prayer? God, we are grateful for the gift of community, a community in transition, because we know that a community in transition is a community that is alive. We thank you for all of the transitions that we have been through and that you have carried us through, and the ones that are yet to come that you are eager to get us on the other side of. As we move in and continue to live into this next chapter of life together as City Church, we ask that your spirit would be alive and vibrant among us, that you would help us to have a vision for the ways that we can participate in it, and that we might be inspired in new and maybe even surprising ways as we seek to follow you in our lives and as a community here together. And so bless us in our efforts, bless our city through our efforts, and may you be glorified in all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, everyone.